The irony wasn't lost on me. This month should have been our 10th wedding anniversary, a milestone I'd once imagined celebrating with champagne, laughter, and maybe a last-minute babysitter. Instead, here I was, standing in my kitchen, wearing yesterday's clothes and scrubbing peanut butter off a lunchbox lid while my wife breezed past me with barely a word. Emma had her hands full, her phone in one and a half-packed purse in the other, as she scanned the counter for her car keys. The twins bickered over who got the last orange juice box, while our youngest stood wailing at the injustice of a soggy pancake. It was just another chaotic morning in the life we'd built together. Chaotic, yet functional. On paper, we had it all. 3 great kids, a 4-bedroom house, and a relationship forged back when MySpace was still a thing. But real life? Let's just say it was far from picture-perfect. I first noticed the shift about 2 years ago. Emma, once a doting stay-at-home mom, started to feel restless. It was subtle at first, a half-hearted sigh when I came home late from work, a lingering stare out the window during dinner. Then one night, after we'd finally wrangled the kids into bed, she dropped the first bombshell. "I can't do this anymore, Jake," she'd said, her voice raw but steady. My heart stopped mid-beat. "Do what?" "This." She gestured vaguely, encompassing everything from the stack of unpaid bills on the counter to the mismatched socks on the coffee table. "I'm just stuck. I need to find myself again." To be fair, I understood. Emma had been tethered to the role of mom for the better part of a decade. After the twins were born, she put her ambitions on hold while I climbed the corporate ladder. She spent her days juggling dirty diapers, tantrums, and PDA meetings while I brought home paychecks and stress. I could see how the grind had worn her down. So when she said she wanted to go back to college, I supported her. I picked up extra slack at home, rearranged my work schedule, and played Mr. Mom so she could focus on her classes. For a while, it felt like we were both on the same team again. She smiled more, laughed more. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, she quit. "College not for me anymore," she'd shrugged one evening, already halfway through a bottle of wine. "I think I just need something less structured." A few weeks later, she landed a job as a waitress at a local bistro. Her best friend Megan worked there too, which made it sound like a safe, supportive environment. At first, it seemed like a win. Emma came home energized, chatting about her quirky coworkers and rude customers. I adjusted my life to accommodate hers. The late-night shifts and weekend doubles meant I was now the de facto parent, shuttling kids to soccer practice, folding endless loads of laundry, and reheating dinner leftovers long after the kids were in bed. I told myself it was temporary, a necessary compromise to help Emma rediscover herself. But temporary turned into routine, and routine turned into something else entirely. One morning, as I stood pouring cereal into mismatched bowls, Emma dashed out the door, throwing a distracted "thanks, babe" over her shoulder. I watched as her silhouette disappeared into the garage, the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air. It hit me then, we were living parallel lives. Sharing a house, raising kids, but miles apart emotionally. Still, I pushed the thought aside. After all, I was the steady one, the rock. And rocks don't crack under pressure, do they? As the garage door rumbled shut behind her, I took a deep breath and turned back to the chaos unfolding in the kitchen. "Who wants waffles?" I called out, plastering on a smile. The twins cheered, oblivious. For them, this was just another morning in their perfectly imperfect life. The first time I heard his name, it slipped out casually, like it didn't carry the weight of what was to come. "Dave said the funniest thing at work today," Emma chuckled, scrolling through her phone as we sat on opposite ends of the couch one evening. I glanced up from the twin school permission slips, my brow furrowing just slightly. "Dave." "Yeah, the line cook. He's this goofy 20-something, she said, waving a hand as if to dismiss my concern before it could form. "Don't worry, he's harmless." The thing about that word, harmless, is that it rarely means what people think it does. But at the time, I let it go. After all, she was finally laughing again. Over the next few weeks, Dave became an unwelcome fixture in our conversations. It wasn't constant, but he popped up just enough to set off a faint alarm in the back of my mind. Dave dared me to try the hottest sauce in the kitchen today. My tongue was on fire for hours. Dave says I'm the only one who can keep up with his sarcasm. Dave thinks I should dye my hair red. Can you imagine? I wanted to tell her to stop mentioning him, but that would have made me the insecure husband, the one who couldn't handle his wife having friends. So instead, I let it simmer inside me, unresolved. One night, as we were climbing into bed, I decided to poke at the edges of the subject. So, this Dave guy. He's pretty funny, huh? Emma shrugged, already scrolling through her phone. Yeah, I guess. He's just a kid, Jake. Don't worry, it's not like that. Not like what? I asked, my tone light but pointed. She rolled her eyes. You know what I mean. He's just a friend. Can we not do this right now? That should have been my first clue. When someone insists there's nothing to worry about, it usually means there's something to worry about. The texting started not long after. At first, it was innocent, quick exchanges about shift schedules and work drama. But it didn't take long for the boundaries to blur. I noticed her phone screen lighting up at odd hours, her fingers tapping out replies faster than I'd ever seen before. She'd laugh at something he said and then turn the screen away, as if shielding their little jokes from my view. One night, as we lay in bed, I asked, "Who's texting you this late?" Emma hesitated, her thumb hovering over the screen. "It's just Dave. He sent me this meme. It's stupid." "Let me see," I said, reaching out with a playful grin, trying to mask the gnawing unease. She pulled the phone away, laughing nervously. "It's not that funny, trust me." Her reaction hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't the words, it was the instinct to hide. The cracks widened after that. Emma started going out more after her shifts, staying late for drinks with her coworkers. She assured me it was innocent, just blowing off steam, but I couldn't shake the nagging doubt that had taken root. One Saturday, as I was folding laundry in the bedroom, I overheard her talking on the phone. "No, Dave, that's ridiculous," she said, her voice light and teasing. "I'll bet you $5 I could outdrink you." I stood frozen in place, clutching one of the twins' mismatched socks. When she hung up, I walked into the living room and leaned casually against the doorway. "Who was that?" She barely looked up from her phone. "On the phone just now." "Who were you talking to?" "Work stuff," she said breezily. "Dave was asking about our shift coverage for next week." She didn't even flinch as she lied. That was the moment I knew something was deeply wrong. I brought it up again a few days later, more directly this time. "Emma, I think you're spending too much time with Dave," I said over dinner, careful to keep my tone measured. "It's starting to feel inappropriate." Her fork clattered against her plate as she set it down. "Oh, come on, Jake. He's a coworker. That's it. You're making this into something it's not." "I'm just saying it's a slippery slope," I replied, choosing my words carefully. "And it's not just about him, it's about us. We're not connecting like we used to." She sighed, rubbing her temples. "I'm tired, Jake. Between work and the kids and everything else, I barely have the energy to think, let alone connect. Can we just drop it?" So I did. For a while, at least. But the cracks were there now, deep and unmistakable. And no matter how hard I tried to patch them up, I could feel the foundation of our marriage shifting beneath my feet. The night Emma didn't come home was a tipping point, not just for our marriage, but for the life I thought we'd built together. It started like any other. She kissed the kids goodnight, threw on her work uniform, and left for her shift with a cheery, "Don't wait up." I didn't think much of it. Staying late for drinks after work had become her new normal, and I'd convinced myself, maybe naively, that it was just her way of blowing off steam. By midnight, I was sprawled on the couch, flicking through channels, the house eerily quiet. My phone buzzed, a text from her. "Emma, running late. Covering for someone. Love you." Nothing unusual. Except by 2 a.m., when she still wasn't home, a knot of unease began tightening in my chest. I called her phone at 2:30. No answer. Again at 3 o'clock. Still nothing. By the third call, I was pacing the living room, gripping my phone. Finally, at 3:30, she answered, her voice curt and groggy. "What, Jake?" "What? Are you serious? It's 3 in the morning. Where are you?" She sighed heavily, as if I was the one inconveniencing her. I told you, I stayed at Megan's. I had too much to drink, and I didn't want to drive. There was a beat of silence as I processed her words. Megan's. I repeated. Yes, Megan's. Jesus, Jake, why are you grilling me like this? I'll be home in the morning. She hung up before I could respond. Here's the thing, Megan and I had spent the evening together at the girls' dance practice. I'd watched her leave with her daughter, and I knew for a fact she'd gone straight home. Emma wasn't at Megan's. She hadn't been at Megan's all night. The knot in my chest turned into a lead weight as I sank back onto the couch. For a few minutes, I just sat there, staring blankly at the darkened TV screen. Then, like a man possessed, I grabbed my phone and opened the parental control app we use to track our kids' devices. Emma's location was still enabled. Her dot on the map wasn't at Megan's house, or anywhere near it. Instead, it hovered over an apartment complex 3 miles away. My stomach dropped. It was the same complex she'd pointed out months ago while we were driving, offhandedly mentioning, "Oh, that's where Dave lives." I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, watching the little blue dot stay stubbornly in place. My heart thudded in my chest, each beat a cruel reminder of what I already knew. At 6 a.m., the garage door creaked open, jolting me from my trance. Emma stumbled into the house, her hair disheveled, reeking of alcohol. She froze when she saw me sitting in the kitchen, still in the same spot I'd been all night. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice low and even. She blinked, her expression guarded. "I told you, I was at Megan's. I couldn't drive, so." "No, you weren't." I cut her off, my tone sharper now. "I talked to Megan. She was home all night with her daughter." Her face faltered for a split second before she recovered, quickly pivoting to a new lie. "Fine, I wasn't at Megan's. I was at Jessica's. We had a few drinks after work, and I crashed on her couch." "Big deal." "Jessica lives in a house," I said coldly. "You were at an apartment complex." "Dave's apartment complex." Her mouth opened, then closed again, her face paling as the weight of her lies came crashing down. "Are you and Dave having an affair?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. The pause that followed was unbearable, stretching out like the moments before a bomb detonates. Finally, she gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Yes." The word hung in the air, heavy and final. "How long?" I demanded. "About 6 months," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I sat back in my chair, the air leaving my lungs in a sharp exhale. 6 months. Half a year of deception, of sneaking around, of looking me in the eye and lying through her teeth. For a moment, I thought about our kids, still asleep upstairs, blissfully unaware that their world was about to crumble. I thought about the nights I'd stayed up late folding laundry or helping with homework so Emma could find herself. I thought about every sacrifice I'd made to keep our family afloat while she betrayed me with a 24-year-old line cook. I thought about all of it, and something inside me broke. "You need to leave," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Jake, wait." "No." I stood, cutting her off. "We'll talk later. But right now, I need you out of this house." Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't care. I walked past her, up the stairs, and shut the bedroom door behind me, leaving her to deal with the mess she'd made. The days following Emma's arrival home in the morning were days of tense silence and whispered conversations behind closed doors. She'd begged me for a chance to explain, but I'd cut her off at every turn. What was there to explain? She'd made her choices, and now the consequences were rolling in like a freight train. For the sake of the kids, I agreed to sit down with her to discuss where we went from here. We met in the living room, neutral territory, though there was nothing neutral about the tension that hung between us. "Jake," she started, her voice trembling, "I never meant for this to happen." I folded my arms, leaning back against the couch. "But it did." She flinched at the bluntness of my tone but pressed on. "I was lonely. We were distant. I felt like you didn't see me anymore, and Dave, he just—" "Don't," I interrupted, my jaw tightening. "Don't you dare try to blame this on me. I've been here, Emma, holding this family together while you went off to find yourself." Her face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but I want to fix this. I want us to fix this. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. You want to fix this? You've been lying to me for 6 months. Sneaking around, sleeping with another man, and now you want to fix things? How does that even work, Emma? Do you expect me to just forget everything and pretend it never happened? I'm sorry, she sobbed, burying her face in her hands. I don't know what else to say. Sorry doesn't cut it, I said coldly. Not this time. In the days that followed, Emma convinced me to try couples therapy. I agreed, not because I believed we could salvage anything, but because I owed it to our kids to try. The sessions were brutal. Each one felt like ripping open a fresh wound, exposing every flaw, every resentment, every betrayal. You're angry, Jake, the therapist said during one particularly heated session. But underneath that anger, there's pain. Can you talk about that? I stared at her, then at Emma, whose tear-streaked face was turned downward. Pain. I echoed, my voice tight. You want to talk about pain? How about the pain of watching someone you love destroy everything you built together? The pain of knowing that while I was here, raising our kids, holding this family together, she was out screwing someone else. Emma sobbed quietly, but I felt no sympathy. Not anymore. A few weeks into therapy, in one night, I got a text from an unknown number. Unknown. Thought you should know Emma's still seeing Dave. They met up last night after work. My blood ran cold. I typed back, my fingers trembling with rage. Who is this? Unknown. A friend. Let's just say I work with her. You deserve better. The details that followed confirmed my worst fears. Emma hadn't ended things with Dave, despite her tearful promises and hollow apologies. She'd simply gotten better at hiding it. Parking her car at decoy locations. Meeting him during her lunch breaks. Feeding me lies with the same ease she once told me she loved me. I confronted her that same night. It was late, and the house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. Emma was already in bed, feigning sleep, when I walked in and flicked on the light. Get up, I said flatly. She groaned, shielding her eyes. Jake, what are you doing? It's late. Get up. There must have been something in my tone, because she sat up slowly, her eyes wary. What's going on? I held up my phone, the anonymous texts glaring back at her. Care to explain this? Her face drained of color. Jake, I don't know what that is. Don't lie to me, I snapped, my voice rising. You're still seeing him, aren't you? She opened her mouth, then closed it again, unable to muster another excuse. I can't do this anymore, Emma, I said, my voice breaking for the first time. We're done. I want you out of the house by the end of the week. Her eyes filled with panic. Jake, please. Think about the kids. I am thinking about the kids, I interrupted. And I'll be damned if I let them grow up in a house built on lies. That was the moment it ended. Not just our marriage but any shred of respect I had left for her. The next few days were a blur of logistical discussions. Who would stay where, how we'd handle custody, what the kids would be told. By the end of the week, Emma packed her bags and moved into a small apartment. I kept the house, the kids, and the pieces of the life she'd shattered. Our 3 kids handled it better than I expected. Emma and I told them together, sitting on the couch, presenting a united front. She played the part of a remorseful but loving parent. I stuck to the facts, careful not to let bitterness bleed into the explanation. Mom and Dad have decided it's best to live in separate homes, I said, forcing my voice to remain calm. But we'll both always be here for you. The twins took the news quietly, their wide eyes darting between us. My youngest, too young to fully grasp the situation, just asked if she could still have pancakes on weekends. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at a bottle of whiskey I hadn't touched in years. You did the right thing, I told myself, though the words rang hollow. 2 days after Emma moved out, Megan called. Hey, she said, her tone hesitant. How are you holding up? I'm surviving, I replied, leaning against the kitchen counter. There was a pause on the other end of the line. You free for a drink? I think we've earned it. I asked. One drink. But if you start ranting about Emma, I'm walking out. Jokingly replied Megan. We met at a small bar downtown, far enough from the usual spots to avoid any familiar faces. It was strange seeing Megan outside the context of shared school events and playdates. We ordered drinks, and before I knew it, one drink turned into two, then three. The evening with Megan was great. We spent 3 hours talking and laughing, talking about each of our exes and how they treated both of us. Her divorce was further along than mine, so we talked about that as well. I had known Megan for a few years at that point, previously as my wife's best friend, so I enjoyed getting to know her from a different perspective. Ever since Emma finally moved out completely, renting a new place, and we could finally move on with our lives, apart from each other, my life has been a tale of two stories. I've been in a relationship with Megan for 7 months now, and I've finally found a good person who makes me happy and enjoys being with me. My life moved forward with a steady momentum I hadn't felt in years. Megan and I found a rhythm, blending our families and creating a version of stability that felt hard-earned. My days were full: work, the gym, soccer games, and the occasional quiet dinner with Megan after the kids went to bed. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and it felt good. Emma's life, on the other hand, seemed to spiral further out of control with each passing month. Emma, on the other hand, became pregnant immediately after leaving. She left her job before being fired for sexual harassment because she was Dave's supervisor. She bought a new car for Dave and then lost the necessary job she had just gotten. The fact that Dave uses cocaine and sells a variety of drugs came to light after he was fired from a restaurant for being high at work. She lost most of her friends when they found out about the deception and lies. Even Megan, once her closest confidant, had no interest in rekindling that friendship. The gossip only intensified when Dave was arrested for dealing cocaine. Emma, now visibly pregnant, was left scrambling to pick up the pieces. She moved into a smaller apartment in a less desirable part of town, struggled to find stable work, and spent most of her time juggling her own chaos. I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. The contrast between our lives couldn't have been starker. On one side, there was me, thriving in ways I hadn't thought possible. I'd lost 20 pounds, completed my first triathlon, and even signed up for a second. The kids were doing well, adjusting to the new normal with resilience I admired. And Megan was a constant source of support and joy, someone who made me laugh when I needed it most and who never let me lose sight of what mattered. On the other side, there was Emma, alone, overwhelmed, and tethered to a man who was as unreliable as he was destructive. I am happy that I moved on and no longer feel stuck being with someone who is a horrible person. I don't sympathize with her because she continues to make bad decisions, but it hurts that she is still someone in my children's lives. But the truth was, I was happy. Not because Emma was struggling or because I'd somehow won the invisible game of post-divorce life. I was happy because I'd chosen to stop settling for less than I deserved.